Shalom, Kol Halal Yahweh Bashin Abashai, Bahashim Rakakwadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders. Salutations to all my fellow laborers doing this work in truth and sincerity, risking their lives and their freedom to do so now more so than ever. To the scattered elect that are scattered around the four corners of the earth, that be like unto the speckled bird, mixed in with the heathen nations, the Israelite foreigners. And to the Akwaf that are listening and learning, to you I say Shalom. This is your brother Malcolm from the branch of the Great Millstone here in Chicago. And we're just going to look at the hatred of Esau against the Israelites and how they just slander and scoff and, make fun of, pass off the bywords, make the bywords. And the truth be said, when you're looking at this is in black and white. And as you've heard us say many a times before, there's no such thing as a black person or a white person. And they actually put shoe polish on themselves to do this. However, there is brown and red people, copper colored people like a penny with those red hues in it. That's where you get your ruddy from. Just Google ruddy people and you're going to see brown people, brown horses, brown dogs, brown animals, cows with those red hues in them. What you won't see is someone white or someone black. So this is just a display of just pure hatred for Esau. So we're going to read it out of this book, again, The Hidden Heroism. I'll put the book up in the frame. The Hidden Heroism by Robert B. Edgerton. All right, and it's Black Soldiers in America's Wars. So I'm reading on page 8 here, and I'm starting at the second paragraph. And and it reads, there were powerful self-protective factors at work in creating this image of cowardice. See, they created this image. With Esau Edom, it's all about controlling the narrative, controlling the information, and controlling what's said about people so that you could control the thought process of other people to think about certain peoples or situations. All right? This is nothing new with Esau Edom. All right, so it says, there were powerful self-protective factors at work in creating this image of cowardice. As anyone possessing even a passing acquaintance with slavery in the American South can readily understand, the specter of armed slaves taking their revenge against white slave owners was an unceasing nightmare that grew in urgency for slave masters. As word of the Haitian Revolution in 1791 reached America, stunning many Southerners with the news of black slaves that had killed hundreds of French slave owners before setting themselves free. Haiti, then known as Saint Domingue, was by far the richest island in the West Indies, and its takeover by some 5,000 slaves, 2/3 of them African-born, was unthinkable to American slave masters. And then there you go. That's that control of the narrative, because they're saying that they were African-born, but they stop right. What they're not telling you that they were refugees in Africa, that they were not from Africa, that they were actually from the land of Israel. All right, and the different parts of Europe. All right, they came from Italy as well. Okay, because they were scattered to those lands. You think about the Aquila of the I believe his name was Aquila of the Italian band. Okay, or could it be Cornelius? I always get those two mixed up when we start talking about the Italian band, but nevertheless, that's mentioned in the scriptures. All right, but as it reads, 2/3 of them African-born was unthinkable to American slave masters, not to mention their counterparts in the West Indies, when Napoleon sent thousands of French soldiers with orders to defeat the rebels and reimpose slavery, the U.S. South rejoiced only to despair again when the ingenuity of the courage of the black rebels led by Toussaint Louverture, Henry Christophe, and Jean J. Delalines, I'm not sure how to pronounce it as French, with help from tropical diseases, decimated the French, setting Haiti free. This successful slave rebellion was made only slightly less fearsome to the U.S. slave owners because of their increased insistence that slaves in the United States were meek and cowardly and that they need not to be feared. So this was, once again, trying to control the narrative and make themselves feel better. But as you see, the narrative that they thought they controlled in the islands backfired on them, because the Haitians, who are the biblical Levites of the tribes of Israel, slaughtered the Edomites and set themselves free, and then beat back Napoleon's army. Hence the reason why Haiti has been mistreated for so long over the centuries since that point. All right, Haiti is constantly being misused because East still wants to make them pay for that. Right, they're one of the only places that ever break free of Edomite hegemony. Then it says, one slave owner freely admitted that his slaves could easily kill him and his family. Yet we all feel so secure and are so free from suspicion of such danger that no care is taken for self-protection. And in many cases, as in mine, not even the outer door is locked. At the start of the U.S. Civil War, a Virginian rose in the Confederate Congress to boast that the slaves' loyalty was never more conspicuous, their obedience never more childlike. At the same time, British lawyer and famed grammarian was correspondent William Billy Russell toured the South, everywhere being told about the childlike docility of the slaves. But if the slaves were so docile and cowardly, he wondered, why did everywhere encounter such elaborate police precautions, night patrols, curfews, and the like? Russell concluded, there's something suspicious in the slaves. Charles Olmsted, a northern visitor to Alabama in 1860, also commented on the constant vigilance of Southerners over possible slave rebellion. The slightest rumor often sparked major military response. He came to the conclusion that Alabama farmers were terrified of their slaves. And they were. As Russell, and because as a matter of fact, that's where you get policing now, police force, because there was no police force in America prior to, during slavery. The police forces, police departments were put into place when the slaves were emancipated. They weren't freed, they were emancipated. Emancipated means you were transferred from one ownership to another. So basically they were transferred from the ownership of the Southern slaves to the U.S. government by way of, documentation. And today that will be in the way of Social Security numbers and birth certificates. That's your certificate of ownership, of their certificate of ownership of you, by the way. And it says, and as Russell Olmsted suspected, the slightest sign of aggression by a slave would usually bring brutal, harsh punishment. Even so, there was approximately 250 armed uprisings in the South and a few in the North, most of them leading in the loss of white lives. You don't see movies about that or hear about that. All right? And especially what I'm about to read now. An example occurred in 1712 in New York City, where black and Indian slaves joined to revolt, killing 9 whites and wounding others. In response, 18 slaves were captured, tortured, and hanged or burned to death. One was sentenced to burn with the slow fire that he may continue in torment for 8 to 10 hours. In Louisiana in 1811, some 500 slaves armed themselves and rebelled, marching on New Orleans in military formation, and they were met by troops who shot 60 to death and later executed another 16. In 1822, a slave in Charleston, South Carolina, divulged in an alleged plan of rebellion to be led by a former slave named Denmark Vesey, who had won $1,500 in a lottery and purchased his freedom. Now, in 1822, that was a lot of money. He had lived a respectable life for some years in Charleston before conceiving a plan to raise an army of 9,000 slaves, kill every white man, woman, and child in the city, then sail to Africa and freedom. Vesey and 36 slaves were hanged. All right. And then it goes on to talk about Nat Turner's thing there. But by the way, that's that account of the Negroes and the Indian slaves, proving that natives were also in slavery. There also was the Royal Anne, which docked into New York in 1715, which had a cargo of Negro, so-called Negro, and so-called native Indian slaves as well that were being shipped to be sold. All right, but let's get some scriptures. First scripture is going to be Ezekiel 35:5. And it reads, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity and the time when their iniquity had an end. Because see, when slavery ended, all right, then they killed you because you had no more value. You see how they treated you when you were a slave. They treated you even worse once you were so-called free. Right? We read about that in this book, how they were killing the soldiers, so-called Negro soldiers, even in uniform, but no so-called white men ever served any time in jail that got in trouble for it. But the Lord has a recompense coming. Let's go to Ezekiel 25, and I'm going to start at verse 12, read down to 14. And it reads, thus saith Yahweh power, because that Edom have dealt against the house of Judah by taking vengeance, and have greatly offended and revenged himself upon them. Therefore thus saith Yahweh power, I will also stretch out my hand upon Edom, and will cut off man and beast from it, and I will make it desolate from Teman to Dedan, and they of Dedan shall fall by the sword. And I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel, that they shall do in Edom according to mine anger and according to my fury, and they shall know my vengeance, saith Yahweh power. All right, so they're going to get massacred the same way that all those wicked Edomite slave owners did in Haiti. All right, and by the way, this person on the screen in this blackface, this woman dressed like a man, all right, this stage production with all these Edomites in blackface, that's Judy Garland. Yeah, Judy Garland was Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, for those of you who didn't know. With her ugly ass daughter, Liza Minnelli. And Liza Minnelli was very unattractive. That was her daughter. All right, because I'm not sure if Liza is still alive or not. I think she's still alive. Right, but yeah, this was the Judy Garland. This was sweet little Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. There she is in all her glory in blackface. She even did. There was another one where she's dressed up looking like buckwheat. All right, in blackface with the braids sticking all over her head, looking like Coolio. By the head, that is, not by the skin, because Coolio is very brown, not black. But let's get back to the scriptures. Let's go to Isaiah the 14th chapter. And I'm going to read verse 1 and 2 first, and it reads, For Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land. And the strangers shall be joined unto them, and they shall cleave unto the house of Jacob. Those strangers are the Israelite foreigners that were scattered among the heathen nations, that be like unto the speckled bird. You can go to Revelation, the 7th chapter, to precept that. All right, because remember, the Israelites got scattered among the heathen, and the Lord said he's going to gather a remnant back from among them. So they're not going to look like typical Negro, Latino, Native American. Isaiah 14:2. And the people shall take them and bring them, now this them are the heathens, to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids, and they shall take captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. So all those southern and northern slave owners, because yes, northerners own slaves too, and the slave ship owners who were the Jewish, are going into slavery. Thus said the prophecy. That's how you know that the people in the land of Israel, this is another great scripture to prove that they don't fit the prophecy. Because when Israel goes back to the land of Israel, they're going to have slaves, handmaids, and servants. It also says that they will dwell in safety. Those people over there are not safe. That's why they have the Iron Dome in the military, and they constantly kicking the heads in of the Palestinians. All right, and using all the military might that they get from their big brother America, who's going to abandon them, be forced to when all hell breaks loose, which is upon them now. But let's jump to verse 9. Isaiah 14:9. Hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stir up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings and nations. So all the other nations are coming up against America, especially with this COVID thing. All right, now you got nations out there that are starting to point fingers at America, because America, trying to control the narrative, keeps trying to put it in Wuhan, China. But, you know, even if that so be, explain how you know, the Americans, how the Israelis were warning of, you know, of an outbreak in Wuhan before the Chinese even knew about it, before Moab even knew, almost a month before. And that's on record, that there were warnings that went out in November, but the people of Wuhan, China, didn't know until December 31st. But America knew. So this is how you know all the nations are going to, just yet another reason why the nations are going to, we're not even going to talk about the Brexit and all the different sanctions and things that hurt and killed all, you know, different members of NATO and the EU, you know, that destroyed their economies. All right. Verse 10. All they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like us? Because now all these other countries are nuclear states and nuclear powers too. And when they join together, they're going to be greater than America. And that's what America has to face on. Verse 11. Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vows, and the worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. So America's rotting. Its worms represent death and decay, and America's decaying. The economy has decayed. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nation? All right, because they profess themselves to be the illuminated ones. But the real illuminated ones are the men of the Lord, the Israelites. Okay? And for thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend into the heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, and I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. And they did. They set their thrones upon the stars of God. The stars of God are really the Israelites. And they set themselves above them and said that they were the Israelites. They are the people of the Lord. And then they did things like this to mock and shame you. Already beat down, destroyed people. All right? They, instead of letting you entertain them, they got a kick out of mimicking you and controlling the narrative of what you were like. Verse 13. But thou hast said in thy, verse 14, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, and I will be like the Most High. And they have. You got satellites, up in the atmosphere. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit, and they that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, is this the man? Is this the race of people? Is this the man that made the earth to tremble? Because everyone's going to narrowly look down at you, and the other nations are going to blame their bad situations on you when they're in captivity under the Israelites, because all the world, nations of the world, all the other 17 nations are going into captivity. See, there was only 18 nations created in the beginning of creation, and only one of those nations was chosen, and that was the Israelites, which consists primarily of the Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, and of course, the unnumbered multitude that are mixed among the heathen nations that the Lord is going to recall back out of them. But as for Edom, verse 21. Actually, I'm going to read 20 through 22, and we'll wrap it up. In Isaiah verse 20, it reads, Thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because thou hast destroyed thy land and slain thy people. The seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. Prepare slaughter for his children for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise, nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities. So all you slave owners, they're all back. See, you got to pay for the sins of your forefathers, because you are your forefathers. That's that regeneration thing that the Bible talks about. Right? Because they love to scream how they wasn't there and they never owned a slave and blah, 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 blah. And it's all a lie. You benefited from the action. And there are laws in America about owning and trading and dealing with stolen property. Negroes, Latinos, and natives are stolen property. The lands that you took from those native people. Stolen land, stolen property. Verse 21 again, prepare slaughter for his children for the iniquities of their fathers, that they do not rise, nor possess the lands, nor fill the face of the world with cities. For I will rise up against them, saith Yahweh of hosts, and cut off from Babylon the name, the remnant, and son, and nephew, saith the Lord. So all the men are going to be utterly destroyed and cut off, because the race continues through the seed, through the man, not through the woman, which is a lie that the fake Jewish people teach. Your identity, your race, your lineage is through the loins of your father, not the womb of your mother. Remember, the 12 tribes of Israel were born of 4 different women who were not Israelites. Their children were. Call Haloi Hawabashim Abashai Bashim Wakakadash Wa Ababa Shalom.